Welcome to Evolved Sun. I'm your host, Matt Finch, and in today's episode, you're going to learn all about who is Ra and what is the Law of One. The Ra material is a source of channeled texts that were done by LL Research in the early 1980s, where Carla Ruckert, the instrument, served as a narrow-band telepathic trance channel for Ra, a late 6th density social memory complex that evolved on the planet Venus billions of years ago, who are in the same octave of creation that we are in, only they're much more closer to completing the octave than we are. The Law of One really isn't a law, it's more like a reality. The reality of one, meaning there is only one being in all the infinite universes. That one being is the one infinite creator. And all of us, all of the plants, all of the animals, all of the planets, all of the solar systems, all of the galaxies, and all are simply facets of the creator experiencing itself. And in today's episode, I'm going to be using as a resource the Ra Contact Resource Series, a concept guide, specifically in the sections on Ra and the Law of One. And with that being said, let's get right into it. Ra says, "We wish to establish that we are truly humble messengers of the Law of One. We can speak to you of our experiences and our understandings, and learn in limited ways. However, we cannot speak in firm knowledge of all the creations. We know only that they are infinite. We assume an infinite number of octaves. However, it has been impressed upon us by our own teachers that there is a mystery-clad unity of creation in which all consciousness periodically coalesces and again begins. Thus, we can only say we assume an infinite progression, though we understand it to be cyclical in nature and, as we have said, clad in mystery. Ra is a unified group of beings, or social memory complex of 6th density. They are also a member of the Confederation of Planets in the service of the infinite creator. Responding to the call of service issuing from our planet, their efforts to aid humanity began long before our recorded history. Their purpose, mission, and intended service is to offer and enunciate the Law of One, which is to say that, to those who wish to learn of the true nature of the universe, Ra teaches of the unity of all things. They share that, in unity, love-light is balanced with light-love. All paradoxes are resolved. All that appears broken is healed, and all that is forgotten is brought to light. Ra discovered that, despite their pure intention, their message became greatly distorted and grossly perverted in their various historical attempts at transmission. In their first direct contact with the Egyptians, 9000 BC, Ra discovered that their very existence caused great confusion around their teachings and those they had come to serve. Ra came among the Egyptians in a form natural to Ra, which was tall and somewhat delicate with a golden luster. They did not mix well with the population. Thusly, though they had come to teach that all was the Creator, and that in unity each was brother to each, they found themselves placed in the hypocritical position of being elevated or glorified, perhaps even deified. Thus they took their leave, never to walk among the people again. In a subsequent reaction, 4000 BC, they report having constructed the Great Pyramid by thought, building other pyramid structures using local or earthly material over the course of the next 1500 years. In a later working with the Egyptians, 1350 BC, specifically with Akhenaten, the priests and peoples quickly distorted their message, robbing it of the compassion with which unity, by its very nature, is informed. Because unity contains all, it cannot abhor any, and the pyramid structures Ra had built for initiation and healing of mind, body, and spirit returned once again to the exclusive use of the royal elite. They described these efforts and those of other members of the Confederation elsewhere in the world as naive due to the harmony of their own past 3rd density experiences. They were not well adapted to the ways of this world, and in their naivete, they thought that direct transfer of information to those of Earth could be helpful. Because of this, Ra has, as they describe it, the great honor and responsibility of continuing to work in service to Earth to help remove the distortions and powers that had been given to the Law of One and eliminate, as far as possible, the distortions caused by those misreading their information and guidance. Ra said, "We are one of the naive members of that confederation and are still attempting to recoup the damage for which we feel responsibility. It is our duty, as well as honor, to continue with your peoples. Therefore, until all traces of the distortions of our teach learnings have been embraced, by their opposite distortions and balance achieved, They declare that they will continue in this honor responsibility until your, shall we say, cycle is appropriately ended. If not this one, then the next. We are not a part of time, and thus are able to be with you in any of your times. The distortions given to their teaching of the law of one are seen as responsibilities rather than failures. Thus, they hold an ongoing responsibility to our world. They meet their responsibility even if only a few are inspired to seek. For if even one entity gains illumination, then the Ra group shall have fulfilled the law of one in service. Ra does not expect to make full reparations for these distortions. Ra says, "The nature of your language is such that what is distorted cannot, to our knowledge, be fully undistorted, but only illuminated somewhat." The attempt to make reparations by offering their thoughts is far more important to Ra than the completeness of the result. In their humility, Ra acknowledges that their group cannot quite figure us out, so they tell the questioner that they cannot give him pointers for questions to ask. As a free agent, he must chart his own course because, Ra says, our social memory complex cannot effectually discern the distortions of the societal mind-body-spirit complex of your peoples. We wish now to fulfill our teach-learning honor responsibility by answering what is asked. This only will suffice, for we cannot plumb the depths of the distortion complexes which infect your peoples. Ra's own historical development. Ra evolved upon Venus, a harshly bright planet under conditions we would consider difficult. During their third density experience, Venus had a total planetary population of 38.5 million people, of which 6.5 million were harvested positive, the remainder repeating third density elsewhere. Their harvest was overwhelmingly positive, with no entities being negatively harvested, meaning that they had little to no experience with the service to self path. In that innocence, they were overflowing with compassion, which enabled accelerated work in fourth density, but which caused a great deal of time to be spent in fifth density, balancing the compassion gained in fourth. Their sixth density work was also accelerated because of their harmony. It was that harmony, however, which was a grievous source of naivete with regard to working with our planet. In their self-described naivete of their third density, they had not developed the barter or money power system, which is all-pervasive here. They were a more philosophical third density planet than ours. Their choices centered on the harmonious balances and dynamics of relationships, exploring sexual energy transfer, and performing metaphysical research in the seeking of adepthood, both through the indigo ray and via relationship with others. In their third density, Ra devised the series of 22 images that depict the major arcana of the tarot as a study of the archetypal mind. Ra's present sixth density experience. Ra says, "To speak of that which sixth density social memory complices labor within is, at best, misprision of plain communication, for much is lost in transmission of concept from density to density, and the discussion of sixth density is inevitably distorted greatly. However, we shall attempt to speak to your query, for it is an helpful one, in that it allows us to express once again the total unity of creation. We seek the Creator upon a level of shared experience to which you are not privy, and rather than surrounding ourselves in light, we have become light. Our understanding is that there is no other material except light. Our rituals, as you may call them, are an infinitely subtle continuation of the balancing processes which you are now beginning to experience. We seek now without polarity. Thus we do not invoke any power from without. For our search has become internalized as we become light love and love light. These are the balances we seek, the balances between compassion and wisdom, which more and more allow our understanding of experience to be informed that we may come closer to the unity with the one Creator which we so joyfully seek." Don asks, "If you, Ra, as an individualized entity, were incarnate on Earth now with full awareness and memory of what you know now, what would be your objective at this time on Earth as far as activities are concerned?" Ra responds, "The query suggests that which has been learned to be impractical. However, were we again to be naive enough to think that our physical presence was any more effective than that love light we send your peoples, and the treasure of this contact, we would do as we did do. We would be, and would offer, ourselves as teach learners." Law of One. The law of one is beyond the limitations of language, beyond the boundaries of conceptual understanding, and beyond the specifications of any physics. It may only be approximated in language by stating that all things are one. Whether a star or a microbe, a first or seventh density being, a resident of this or the next octave, there is only one being in all the infinite universes. That one being, the Creator, experiences itself in infinite forms, infinite entities, infinite situations, all of equal, sacred value, but remains ever one, and you are that. Ra says, you are everything, every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. You are love, light, light, love. You are. This is the law of one. In that oneness, there is no actual polarity, no actual right or wrong, and no actual disharmony. To the citizens of certain realms of experience, like ours, things such as polarity, right, wrong, and harmony, disharmony are important and meaningful concepts. However, the law of one says that they are ultimately illusions. In fact, Ra says, healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex realizes deep within itself the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind-body-spirit complex reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to a form congruent with the law of one. Ra does use the word law or way to describe other governing pathways and principles, but reminds the seeker that there is only one law. That is the law of one. Other so-called laws are distortions of this law, some of them primal and most important for progress to be understood. However, it is well that each so-called law, which we also call way, be understood as a distortion rather than a law. There is no multiplicity to the law of one. Ra says that in this unity or singleness, all paradoxes are resolved, all that is broken is healed, all that is forgotten is brought to light. There is a distinction to be made between the actual law of one and the books titled the law of one. The latter contain the transcripts of a transmission from a humble messenger speaking about the law of one. Of the former, Ra says, there is no possibility of a complete source of information of the law of one in this density. Don asks, what is the greatest service that our population on this planet could perform individually? Ra responds, there is but one service. The law is one. The offering of self to Creator is the greatest service, the unity, the fountainhead. The entity who seeks the one Creator is with infinite intelligence. From this seeking, from this offering, a great multiplicity of opportunities will evolve depending upon the mind-body-spirit complices, distortions, with regard to the various illusory aspects or energy centers of the various complices of your illusion. Thus, some become healers, some workers, some teachers, and so forth. All right, and thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you got lots of value from it. This truly is a subject that one can spend decades and decades, if not their whole entire life, studying and deepening their knowledge of and deepening their embodiment of. Some people think that the Ra contact is actually a psyop done by the deep state. Other people have stated that Ra was terrorizing ancient Egypt and was service to self-oriented. I don't believe that myself, but that's probably only because I've spent several hundreds of hours reading and listening to Law of One and Ra material content. And I think for anybody that even spends a dozen or more hours studying this topic from the right sources, in my opinion, it becomes more and more clear that this is not a psyop and that it is a real narrow-band telepathic trance channeling that did occur in the early 1980s. And I don't know about you, but I've listened to a lot of channels, and in comparison, they all seem very immature compared to the Ra material channelings. But that's just my opinion, which is just based on my experiences. If you'd like to learn more about the Law of One, I've got a growing playlist with dozens of episodes all on the Law of One and subtopics within the Law of One. And with that being said, thanks so much as always, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take good care of yourself.